He remembers the sound of the radiator more than anything else. The way it clicked and hissed at night, like it was arguing with itself. That tiny apartment smelled like old paint and burnt coffee, and every morning he woke up already tired. Tired of counting coins. Tired of pretending he was fine. He used to stand in front of the mirror before sunrise, tie a cheap tie, and practice a smile that never quite looked real. On the outside, he looked like someone starting his day. On the inside, he felt like someone stuck in the same one for years. The hardest part wasn't being broke. It was the quiet fear that this was all life had planned for him. He worked jobs that barely noticed him. Warehouse shifts that left his hands cracked and bleeding. Retail counters where customers talked through him, not to him. Some weeks, rent came late. Some weeks, food ran out first. He learned how to sleep hungry and wake up pretending it didn't matter. Friends stopped inviting him out because he always said no. Family stopped asking how he was doing because the answer never changed. Rejection became normal. Failure became routine. And every night, when the city lights flickered outside his window, he wondered how other people made it look so easy. The doubt didn't arrive all at once. It grew slowly, like a weight he carried everywhere. He questioned every decision he'd ever made. Maybe he wasn't smart enough. Maybe he waited too long. Maybe he just didn't have what others had. One night, after a long shift and a shorter paycheck, he sat on the floor with his back against the wall and stared at nothing for a long time. For the first time, quitting didn't feel like failure. It felt like relief. Let go of the dream. Stop fighting. Accept the limits. That thought scared him more than being broke ever had. The night didn't feel important when it began. No storm outside. No dramatic phone call. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and a single light flickering above the kitchen table. He spread the bills out in front of him, one by one. Rent, electricity, phone, a credit card he barely remembered using. Each envelope felt heavier than paper should. He already knew the numbers wouldn't work, yet he added them anyway, as if hoping they might change out of respect for effort. They didn't. He leaned back in the chair and closed his eyes. For a long moment, he felt nothing. Not sadness, not panic, just a hollow quiet, like the pause after bad news when your body hasn't caught up yet. Then something shifted. It wasn't hope. Hope had disappointed him too many times to show up uninvited. It was irritation, a slow, simmering frustration that crawled up from his chest into his throat. He thought about all the times he'd waited. Waited for the right moment. Waited for confidence. Waited for someone to notice his effort and give him a chance. He realized how much of his life had been spent standing still, convincing himself that patience was the same thing as progress. His jaw tightened, not because life was hard, but because he had accepted that hardness is permanent. He looked around the apartment. The peeling paint, the second-hand furniture, the clock on the wall that ticked too loudly, like it was keeping score. This place wasn't just where he lived. It was proof of every excuse he'd made. And for the first time, that thought didn't crush him. It challenged him. He stood up and walked to the sink, splashing water on his face. When he looked in the mirror, he didn't try to smile. He didn't try to lie to himself. He just stared. I can't do this anymore, he thought. Not in the dramatic sense. Not as a threat or a promise. Just as a fact. That night, he didn't write a grand plan. He didn't map out a future version of himself. He made one decision, small enough not to scare him. I will stop waiting. That was it. No speeches. No timeline. Just movement. He sat back down and pulled out his old laptop, the one with the cracked corner and the fan that sounded like it was about to give up. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for. He just knew he needed to learn something. Anything that could turn effort into leverage. The internet felt overwhelming at first. Too many voices. Too many promises. Too many people claiming success like it was a personality trait. He almost closed the laptop more than once. Instead, he picked one skill. Not the flashiest. Not the one people bragged about. Just something practical. Something that rewarded consistency. The first week was humbling. He realized how little he knew. How slow he was. How easy it would be to quit and tell himself he tried. But something strange happened. Every night he showed up, even tired, even annoyed, the fear lost a little ground. He didn't feel confident. He felt focused. After work, while others rested, he learned. While the city slept, he practiced. Mistakes piled up faster than progress, but he stopped treating them like verdicts. They became information. Some nights, exhaustion won. He fell asleep with the laptop still open. Some mornings, he woke up late and angry at himself. But he came back. Weeks passed. Nothing changed on the outside. Same job, same apartment, same bank balance hovering near zero. But inside, something had shifted. He stopped asking if it would work. He started asking what to fix next. The bills didn't disappear. The stress didn't magically fade. In fact, some days felt heavier because now he was tired from trying as well as surviving. There were moments he questioned the decision. Moments when he wondered if effort without guarantees was just another form of denial. Late nights when he stared at the screen and thought about how easy it would be to return to numbness. But then he'd remember that night at the table. The anger, the clarity, and he'd keep going. He didn't tell many people what he was doing. Partly because he wasn't sure how to explain it. Mostly because he didn't want opinions to touch something still fragile. Progress showed up quietly. A concept that finally made sense. A task that took half the time it used to. A small opportunity that didn't exist before. Nothing life-changing, just enough to prove he wasn't lying to himself anymore. That was the real turning point. Not success. Belief earned through repetition. One night, months later, he looked at the same table where the bills had once defeated him. They were still there, but so was he, and for the first time, he didn't feel trapped by the future. He felt responsible for it. The choice he made that night didn't fix his life. It gave him ownership of it, and that was enough to change the direction of everything that followed. Growth didn't announce itself when it arrived. It slipped in quietly, disguised as longer days and heavier fatigue. At first, nothing looked different. He still woke up before sunrise, still rode the same bus, still clocked into the same job where no one asked about his dreams. If anything, life felt harder now. He was working full days for survival and long nights for a future that hadn't proven itself yet. There were mornings when his body resisted getting up, when his mind searched for reasons to skip just one day. One night off wouldn't matter, he told himself. But somehow, he always sat up anyway. Discipline didn't feel noble. It felt stubborn, like refusing to let exhaustion make decisions for him. The work itself was slow and frustrating. For every small improvement, there were 3 new problems he didn't know how to solve. He followed instructions carefully, then watched them fail in his own hands. Sometimes he stared at the screen for minutes at a time, convinced he'd missed something obvious that everyone else seemed to understand. Failures started to stack up. Not dramatic failures, quiet ones, applications ignored, ideas that went nowhere, small risks that cost him money he really couldn't afford to lose. There were nights he sat at the edge of his bed, replaying mistakes in his head, wondering if this was just another version of false hope. The old voice came back sometimes. The one that whispered he was late, behind, outmatched. But something was different now. He didn't run from that voice anymore. He let it talk while he kept working. Weeks turned into months. The learning curve flattened slightly. Tasks that once took hours now took less time. He stopped panicking when things broke and started fixing them step by step. The chaos became familiar. One small win came unexpectedly. Nothing impressive. Nothing worth telling people about. Just proof that someone else found value in what he could do. He checked the message twice to make sure it was real. Then a third time. The amount wasn't big, but it was earned differently than any paycheck he'd ever received. That night, he didn't celebrate. He just sat quietly, letting the moment settle. It didn't mean he'd made it, but it meant the door wasn't locked anymore. From there, progress stayed inconsistent. For every step forward, there was a reminder of how far he still had to go. He raised his standards, and the work demanded more from him. More focus, more patience, more willingness to start over when something didn't work. Some days, confidence flickered. Other days, it disappeared completely. He learned not to chase it. Confidence came after action, not before. His routine tightened. Less wasted time. Fewer distractions. He stopped explaining himself to people who didn't understand what he was building. Not out of arrogance. Out of protection. Sleep became shallow. Coffee became necessary. He started measuring time differently. Not by weekends or paydays, but by progress made or lessons learned. There were setbacks that felt personal. Opportunities that slipped away at the last second. Feedback that stung more than it helped. Moments when he questioned whether growth was happening at all or if he was just better at convincing himself it was. One evening, after losing something he'd worked weeks for, he almost quit. Not loudly, quietly, the kind of quitting that looks like postponing effort until it fades away. He sat there, staring at the wall, feeling that familiar exhaustion press down on him. Then he thought about how far he'd already moved from that man counting coins in silence. He wasn't winning yet, but he wasn't helpless anymore. So he adjusted, changed his approach, learned what the loss was trying to teach without turning it into a judgment of his worth. That became a pattern. Try, fail, correct, repeat. The growth was uneven, but it was real. His skills sharpened, his instincts improved. He started noticing mistakes before they happened. Money began to change, slowly. Not enough to feel safe. Just enough to breathe. Just enough to prove momentum existed. He paid a bill early for the first time in his adult life. The feeling surprised him. Not joy, relief. With each small improvement, the pressure shifted. It didn't disappear. It evolved. The fear of never making it was replaced by the fear of messing it up. But that fear pushed him forward instead of freezing him. He learned the value of showing up on bad days. Of working without applause. Of trusting a process he couldn't fully see yet. Growth wasn't about becoming unstoppable. It was about becoming consistent. Late one night, he looked at his reflection again. Same face. Same tired eyes. But something else was there now. Stability. Not financially. Internally. He didn't feel special. He felt capable. And that quiet shift carried him forward, into a future that no longer felt like a gamble, but like a responsibility he was finally ready to carry. The moment didn't announce itself. No knock on the door. No call in the middle of the night. Just a regular morning, light slipping through the blinds, dust floating in the air like it always had. He woke up before the alarm and lay there for a second, listening. Not for the radiator this time. It had been silent for months now. The quiet felt different, not empty, settled. He reached for his phone and checked the numbers, the way he still did out of habit. They were steady, not impressive, but solid. He sat up slowly, letting that reality sink in. The panic that used to hit his chest first thing in the morning never came. There was no rush to calculate what could go wrong today. No instinct to brace for bad news. It surprised him how emotional that absence felt. He moved through the day calmly. Paid a bill without checking the balance 3 times. Bought groceries without adding everything in his head. Small things, but they landed heavier than any celebration could have. Later, while sorting through old papers, he found an envelope buried at the bottom of a drawer. Past due notice. From years ago. He sat down and stared at it longer than necessary. He remembered exactly how it felt when it arrived. The tight chest. The heat in his face. The shame of knowing he had no solution. Now it was just paper. A record of a version of himself that no longer existed in the same way. That realization didn't make him proud. It made him quiet. Success, he learned, didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like space. Space to think. Space to rest. Space to make decisions without fear shouting over every option. The work hadn't stopped. If anything, it demanded more now. More responsibility. More consistency. More awareness that one careless move could undo months of effort. But the pressure felt different. It came with choice. He turned down things that didn't align anymore. Not because he was above them. Because he finally understood the cost of distraction. People began to notice changes before he did. Comments slipped into conversations. You seem calmer. You look healthier. You've changed. He nodded, unsure how to explain that nothing dramatic had happened. Just thousands of quiet decisions stacking on top of each other. One evening, he walked through his apartment slowly, noticing details he used to ignore. The steady light. The solid furniture. The absence of clutter that once mirrored his mind. He paused by the window and looked out at the city. Same streets. Same noise. Different relationship to it all. He wasn't chasing survival anymore. He was maintaining momentum. There were moments of disbelief. Days when he waited for something to collapse. Old habits don't disappear quietly. They linger, checking if the door is still open. But each time fear returned, it found less to hold on to. He thought about the version of himself who sat on the floor, back against the wall, ready to give up. He didn't judge him. He understood him. That man did the best he could with the tools he had. The difference was that he eventually picked up new ones. Money improved gradually, then noticeably, then enough that he stopped tracking every dollar and started tracking direction instead. He invested back into what built him. Time, education, health. The wins came quietly. A goal met earlier than expected. A risk that paid off. An opportunity that once would have felt impossible now felt earned. He didn't announce these moments. He absorbed them. Late one night, after finishing work, he sat alone in the living room with the lights off. No screens. No noise. He let himself feel it. Not excitement. Gratitude. Not for money. For endurance. He realized something then. He hadn't escaped hardship. He had outgrown it. Life still pushed back. Still demanded effort. Still required attention. But it no longer dictated who he was allowed to be. He slept deeply that night. The kind of sleep that comes from trust. In the morning, he woke up ready. Not desperate. Not fearful. Ready. He stepped into the day without ceremony. Just another step forward. And if someone had asked him when everything changed, he wouldn't have pointed to a single moment. He would have pointed to a decision made quietly, long ago, when no one was watching. That was where his life shifted. Not from broke to wealthy. But from stuck to moving. And that movement never stopped.